Hello, I'm Patricia Gras. Welcome to Passion Time. I'm here with the former mayor of Houston, Annise Parker. She was also voted among the top 10 world's best mayors last year. Thank you so much for joining us on Passion Time. It's great to have you. I want to ask you the question I ask everyone, and that is, how did you find your passion and how are you living your passion?
That's a great question because I had the opportunity over the last 18 years to live my passion. I spent 20 years working in the oil and gas industry, but I spent my nights and weekends as an active community volunteer. And I came to the point where I was thinking, I'm working to support my volunteer habit. It's not
the other way around.
No, and that's where I had all my fulfillment. And I was a civic club president. I was working on neighborhood issues, and I kept looking at folks in the city thinking, I could do that, I could do better. I want to fix this, and the only way I can fix it is being in office. And so I ran for city council and just kept running.
And you just kept running. Okay, so that leads me to my next question, which is, are you going to keep running? Could you see yourself maybe running for governor or something in Texas?
I can, and I may continue to run, but my passion is to make things happen. I loved the job as mayor. I like being a council member, I like being controller, but I love being mayor. That's probably the best job I will ever have.
Really?
Because you get up every day and make things happen. It's why I'm not interested in running for a legislative position. Member of Congress. Or
takes forever to get things done.
Yeah, they actually don't do things. They talk about things. They pass legislation. So
and they criticize each other.
So if the right county or state position opened up where I could run an agency or make things happen, I'd be interested in doing that. The only real difference is that local government, city government is nonpartisan, and county or state would be following a partisan path in a primary round. Although I'm a Democrat and I have ties in that community, I didn't really engage here at the local level while I was in office.
And now you plan to?
I'm thinking hard about it.
With those nasty ladies, right? With those nasty ladies that vote.
Nasty women, yeah. No, I'm looking actually hard at Harris County and maybe Harris County judge if the
Commissioner's
seat is
Court,
open.
yeah.
But there are also possibilities of the state. I just don't know that the state will turn. All the races are in the midterm, so 2018, 2022. And I don't know if I'll still be interested in 2022.
Yeah, maybe
just right off into the sunset.
Yes.
But I'm working now to try to keep my hand in. I was off work for 6 months. And
what was that like? I'm sure.
I had a fellowship at Harvard, so I had 3 months up in Cambridge, and that was great because it got me out of town and I could decompress.
Right.
But then I came back and I was just, okay, I need something to do. I didn't need a job. I needed work. Something I could really enjoy and be passionate about.
Sure.
So I'm teaching at Rice, one class.
Wow.
And I went to work for neighborhood centers.
Oh, wonderful.
An amazing.
It is an amazing organization, yes. Now, tell me what you're doing at Rice. What are you teaching?
Urban policy. I'm teaching an urban policy lab. So I have 15 students who are going out into the community and doing research. They have to do field work and come back and write about it. So things like homelessness or animal overpopulation or human trafficking.
Whatever's the issue that's
they're
concerned.
passionate about.
Wow.
And in fact, that's the exact phrase I used with them. Don't just go do something for an assignment. Pick something that you are interested in, that you could get passionate about, and maybe if you research it, you'll get engaged in it later.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about how was Harvard? What did you do at Harvard? Was it studying or?
No, I was in the Institute of Politics, and it's actually a fairly cool program. I was in the 50th year of the program, and it's the Institute of Politics is designed as a living memorial to President Kennedy, with the idea that each semester they bring in 6 public policy practitioners, and that we are there as a resource for undergraduates. I can't say I taught at Harvard, but I gave 8 90-minute seminars.
Okay, well, it can be seen as that, yeah.
and it was so I enjoyed that. I enjoyed interacting with the students, but the best part was just being out of Houston. So I couldn't obsess. I couldn't worry about what the next mayor was doing or not doing, and
I know it's just stressful.
Yeah,
yeah.
And it was extremely helpful. Although I was sitting in my apartment on Valentine's Day and it was -8 degrees in Cambridge. So
and then you said, I don't mind Houston that much anymore, right?
Exactly. But it was a good break, and it kept me occupied and gave me a chance to clear my head. But now I'm back into things. And what I'm doing at Neighborhood Centers, I'm Senior VP and Chief Strategy Officer, and I'm working on the kinds of things I was excited about as mayor. We're building a new center out in East Aldine on the north side. We're building a new workforce upskilling job training center, we hope, in Pasadena, and I'm helping put those pieces together.
And Neighborhood Centers is a community organization that just provides all kinds of services.
110 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
Came out of the settlement house movement. So it was originally focused on integrating immigrants into the broader community, and it still does that.
It still does that. It helps, I know, because they've helped a lot of the Hispanic community, but they help everybody. Let's talk about your years as mayor. Looking back, let's talk about what was the greatest life lesson you got from being mayor for 6 years in Houston? It's a very broad question,
that is the greatest life lesson, I'm not sure, but that. Well, I learned a lot about cities, and I learned some things about myself, and
like what?
I learned I couldn't always get it right.
Like you can make mistakes.
I can make mistakes. I could try to get it right, and that was always my goal, but that I had to forgive myself when I couldn't, when I made a mistake and when I couldn't get it right. And as I'm kind of a type A perfectionist, and that was hard. But I had 2.2 million people, and sometimes 6.2 million people mad at me at any one time, and I had to be comfortable with
yourself. One of the things that you've talked about is the HERO ordinance and what happened there. What happened exactly, and how do you see the future of that ordinance?
It was a good ordinance. It was a well-written ordinance. We were the only major city in America that didn't have any kind of non-discrimination ordinance. Most cities, there are 220 cities or so that have ordinances like that. And in the last decade or so, they have amended their ordinances to add sexual orientation and gender identity. We didn't have anything. And so we were writing an ordinance that included all the federally protected groups. This is, unfortunately, a very vocal minority focused in on the transgender protections and started talking about men in women's bathrooms, letting sexual predators in.
Right.
And it became, it was very frustrating because it wasn't about logic, it was about emotion and fear. And I would speak to groups and I would say, it is illegal to go into the bathroom of the wrong gender, and you can get arrested for that.
Yes.
It's illegal to go to into a public restroom and cause a disturbance. You can get arrested. It's certainly illegal to assault someone anywhere. You could get arrested for that. None of what we're doing changes that. So can you support the ordinance? And they just would. I mean, the logic wouldn't.
It didn't make sense to them.
And the other aspect of it was that the average age of voters was 68. Young people think this is not an issue.
Because it's not an issue for them. Yes.
No, and if you're a voter under 30, you kind of wonder why it's on the ballot anyway. If you're under 50, you can probably get there, but if you're over 50, you don't know what the word transgender means. And when a pastor stands up and keeps saying it's going to allow turn all women's locker rooms into unisex locker rooms, which it would have done, and we would say, but there are 200 other cities, and like Dallas and San Antonio, and they have the ordinance. It hadn't happened there. Why would it happen in Houston? And I just couldn't get through.
You couldn't get through. But I think it might change again. It'll come up again for a vote.
Well, because of what's happening in North Carolina, the city of Charlotte,
they're losing millions of dollars.
The city of Charlotte actually did exactly what I was talking about. They took an existing ordinance and added sexual orientation and gender identity, and the state legislature went into emergency session to slapped them down, and while they were in session, they took away the ability to protect those groups and stripped it away from all the other places in North Carolina that had it. And yes, the business community has reacted. So this is something I think with the business community stepping up, it'll either gradually be reversed or there'll be some case that goes to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court will sort it out. It's a war that's already been won demographically, but we may continue to lose battles just as we did in Houston.
Right. Now, I've seen some video of you skydiving and destroying homes and you know, giving people proclamations and all these things that mayors do. I was going to ask you, what was the funnest thing you did that had nothing to do with politics, the funnest thing you did when you were a mayor?
Probably destroying homes. Being a backhoe is so much fun.
Demolition.
Demolition. The power in those machines, and if you got abandoned property that's been a haven for drugs and crime.
True.
And
Yes. Yeah.
Cancer in the neighborhood, and to be able to go and take that backhoe and just pull it down. Now, I did it a few times. I thought, this is cool. And the first few times they did it, the operator was right there with me. And then they got.
Yeah, you did it on your own.
Well, they were there
watching
but they
you.
pretty much let me do it, and until the time I almost dropped one of the houses on the house next door.
Oh,
It came about that.
That was, oh no.
Okay, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that anymore.
No.
And the skydiving was almost an accident.
Scary.
Yeah.
Scary. I've done it. It's scary.
I didn't want to do it, and I'll never do it again. And just thinking about it, I get queasy.
Ooh. Yeah, it's scary.
Because what I discovered is that I was doing it because people who worked for me were doing it. My executive team decided to do it as a bonding experience. And I just went out there to watch them. And I psyched myself into it. I didn't have enough humility as a leader. It was like, these are my people, and they're doing something I'm afraid to do.
But I'm going to do it.
So I'm going to do it because I cannot have people who work for me doing something that I'm not willing to do. I didn't need to do that. They didn't need me to do that. That's not our job. And you know, they'd come down and like, oh, yeah, it's scary when you're in, you're free fall, but when the parachute comes out, you just float down. No. I was snuggling it all the way, and I hated it.
I've done it. It's like death. And then when they pull you up, you come alive again. That's how I felt when I did it. Your greatest achievements, you've said, I don't know if you agree with me or not, homelessness and parks in Houston. Is that right?
I named three: the Parks and Green Space, which is like the Bio Greenway initiative, and a number of other big park initiatives. The fact that we tackled homelessness and we have effectively ended veterans' homelessness, so that veterans are not on the street because they don't have resources, but because they choose to do that. And we dropped homelessness by about 60%. But the third thing is that it's not visible yet, but we are doing a massive overhaul of the street and drainage system and the water and sewer system. We're pumping more money into those systems, and people can't see it, particularly water.
Yeah, because it's underground.
It's
underground.
But we are investing more in our base infrastructure than probably any other city in America right now, and that will pay off in the long term.
Sure, yeah.
These are 20-year plans.
And what do you think about making Houston more sexy, like as a tourist destination?
We are making.
Yeah,
okay,
we're becoming more sexy because.
I will say that I'll take some credit for it, not because I was doing it deliberately, but when I was elected mayor, it made worldwide news.
Yeah.
And everybody was paying attention to Houston.
That's true.
Lesbian mayor elected in Houston, and it was lesbian or Houston, and it was the combination. And it gave me an unparalleled opportunity to say, yes, you want to talk to me about my personal life or how I got elected, but let me tell you about Houston.
Right, you took that advantage of that.
Yeah,
right.
You pivoted away.
Right.
And it's not an accident or a coincidence that all of a sudden Houston started popping up on
national news,
city and
yes.
City of the Year. It wasn't that we became cool, but people started paying attention.
We were always cool.
We were always cool.
Yeah.
And we just never really marketed ourselves that way. And
yes.
Everything you go to a city for, museums and dining and art and sports and that urban vibe, you can find here. The same kind of things you find in any other major urban area that people go to. The only thing we don't have is scenic terrain.
Right.
but we're a great tourist
For all that other stuff.
destination, and we are less expensive.
Yes,
than,
yes. The cost of living here is
than most of the other big cities.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you something about the elections now, of course. You have, I would say, your family represents the most diverse minority family that I could imagine. You have white, Hispanic, black, gay, you know, all these different groups. And I understand.
We should explain. My wife and I we have four children.
Exactly. Yeah,
so
and
we have an African American son, and we have a couple of biracial.
Latino, black.
Daughters, and a sort of Anglo-Latina daughter too. So we just have
Diversity. And diversity is something that we feel strongly about in Houston. We are the most diverse large city in the U.S., correct?
1 in 4 Houstonians is foreign born.
Right.
Which is a huge amount of diversity added. But in terms of the ethnic and racial mix, too, we're a majority minority city.
And now, though, we have a presidential election where it appears that minorities, whether religious minorities or racial minorities, are a little bit under attack by one of the presidential candidates. And my question is, why do you think this is happening? And does it represent as many as it seems to represent? As far as I know, right now it's 40% of the American voters.
Unfortunately, I think it does represent hidden opinions. And Donald Trump has given voters permission, in essence, to voice their bigotry publicly. And to hear it from him inspires them. Now, I also think that he whips up the crowd, and he says things that he may not have thought through, and they say things that they may not really want to act upon. But it's a wake-up call, I think, for America, that we still have a lot of work to do to recognize each other's differences and embrace each other's differences, because it really does seem as if there are two Americas right now in terms.
That's what it seems like, right?
Politics, but also. It's one thing to have different opinions and beliefs and ideas and ideals, but what we have right now is different facts. I mean, when what is it, 30% of Republicans believe that President Obama was not born in the United States.
60%.
60%?
Yeah.
And then a significant number of them believe that he's
Muslim.
Muslim.
I'm going to read some statistics for you, which is that in the national sphere right now, 80% of the time, Trump lies every 3 minutes. And it says 30% of the time Hillary lies, according to Politico. Now, what I have a question about is, why is it okay for politicians or the people who are running for office to lie this way? And why is it that people believe the lies? I mean, you just mentioned the Obama birth certificate. They went on and on and on and on for many, many years, and 65% of the people who were backing Trump believed that he was either a Muslim or he was not American.
He was born in Kenya.
Right. And so
it is never right for anyone to lie, and it's never right for a politician to lie. Now, I'm not going to try to excuse that at all. I will tell you what happens sometimes, and that is that we change our positions. Anyone who's been in office as long as, or in public as long as Hillary Clinton, you change positions. And when you say this is my position, and someone says, well, that used to be your position, you're lying, you've changed it.
Yeah.
And the other is that we often parse the truth, that you don't give the whole picture or all the facts. But the final problem is that when you are a candidate at that level, and at my level, I got some of it, but I knew my subjects really well. You're having information fed in from all different directions, and it's like a funnel coming at you, and you're doing talking points, and someone's handing you a briefing paper as you walk on stage, and you are parroting other people's words, and there's just no other way to say it, and it is a challenge. But part
part of this too is that Donald Trump has just been saying over and over again, crooked Hillary. He doesn't offer any real evidence for that. He just says crooked Hillary, crooked Hillary, crooked Hillary, and
well, he uses the evidence.
Well, he uses WikiLeaks. So
WikiLeaks
okay, so what is the thing in
Benghazi.
WikiLeaks? The WikiLeaks, they say you should have a public position and a private position. I have had public positions and private positions. Having a public position means that you have tried to figure out what is politically feasible, and you have taken that position. But you may be wanted to be much farther along, or that you're being dragged along because you personally. I mean, I have a public position that I am pro-choice. I'm absolutely pro-choice. But if you ask me, I could not have an abortion, and it's a horrible procedure, and so I cannot support it, but I'm pro-choice because I would never tell someone else how to make that decision. That is my private position and my public position. And that doesn't mean I'm a liar.
Right, right. But that's different. I mean,
But that's what.
They use Benghazi, they use the email.
But it's the same thing. The email server. 2 other secretaries of state had private email servers. Exactly. So the question came down to, was she told not to do it or not? I don't know. But if she looked at what the other secretaries of state were doing and decided, well, they did it, I can do it, even if she's told not to, it's not a crime. Right. It may not be wise, but this whole campaign, it's frustrating on a lot of levels, but it is bad for our democracy. We need strong candidates, worthy candidates on both sides. I think that Donald Trump is unfit to serve. I think he's a narcissistic sociopath. I could disagree with a John McCain or a Mitt Romney on policy, but I wouldn't be afraid of them becoming president. And the other thing that has happened over the last few years is our democracy only works if people come together in the middle and compromise. That's how good legislation is made. But with the rise of the Tea Party since 2010, it has become a point of honor that they don't work with the other side. No compromise.
Exactly.
That's the first our government falls apart under those circumstances because it is designed to facilitate cooperation and the balance of power.
Which is what you did in Houston.
I tried very much to.
You worked with different groups, and that's what you were praised for.
Yeah.
What do you want your legacy to be looking back? And I know you've got a long way to go, but so far so good.
That I was a good mayor of Houston, that I was a good steward of the city and the city's resources, and that I made it a better place to live for the long term.
You sure did.
Thank
you
you
so much, Annise Parker, for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Passion Time.
Yo sé que tú puedes, que tú eres capaz. Cambia tu vida. La vida es una y tú vas a triunfar. Cambia tu vida. con fe y esperanza las puertas se abrirán.